Welcome to Ecopsychology Voices, an interview series with some of ecopsychology's luminaries. Hello, my name is Carol Koziel, and I'm the founder of the Canadian Ecopsychology Network, the host of this series. Linda Bazal and I co-created this program. Today, I am thrilled to be in conversation with Nick Totton, author of one of the pioneering texts for applied and clinical ecopsychology, Wild Therapy, Undomesticating Inner and Outer Worlds. Nick is a somatic psychotherapist, trainer, and supervisor from Cornwall in the United Kingdom. In addition to writing Wild Therapy, he's the author of many other books, including Body Psychotherapy and Psychotherapy and Politics. Welcome, Nick. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. And before we get started, is there anything else that our audience should know about you?
I don't know. Well, what I wanted to say, which is partly about me, is that I really appreciated the way that so many people acknowledged the First Peoples and their locations. Of course, here in England, we don't know who they were. It's been such a long time.
Yes.
And it feels like a real loss, a real lack, that we can't even name them.
Right. Well, thank you for acknowledging and noticing that, Nick. So to get started in our conversation, you open your book with the statement, "Therapy is by nature wild, but a lot of it at the moment is rather tame." What is wild therapy?
Well, I mean, I use those opening sentences quite a lot to introduce talks and so on. But another phrase that we use a good deal, it's in our advertising, is wild therapy, bringing therapy into the wild and bringing wildness into therapy. Wild is a word with so many significances, isn't it? So many different ways of taking it, and I chose the expression wild therapy to be a bit provocative in some ways, because some of the meanings of wild, like savage and chaotic and things like that, are rather challenging. But what I'm primarily getting at with wildness is a sense of something that's spontaneous and self-organizing and not externally controlled, not adapted. And of course, our civilization, our human society, is thoroughly adapted after several thousand years. And there have been enormous gains in that process, but also enormous losses. So my sense is that by exposing ourselves to and by engaging in dialogue with the unadapted aspects of the other than human world, we can wake up the unadapted aspects of ourselves and become more spontaneous and more free and creative in our way of being. So it's a dialogue. It's about a dialogue between the other than human and the human, allowing both to express their wild and spontaneous nature. But that'll do as a first approximation. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. So building on that, you observe that people tend to find the shallow order of domestication more comfortable than the deep order of the wild. So my question is, how and when did we domesticate ourselves?
Oh, that's a vast question, isn't it? I mean, the first thing to say is that I think wildness and domestication have always both been present in human beings and in human culture. You go into the woods, the first thing you do is you make a campsite, you make a safe place. You make a place to be, you clear it, you put a fire in the middle of it. That's completely natural and completely um, inherent to us. It's not like we can or should be completely wild. It's a question of the balance between the wild and domesticated aspects of our existence. And I think my sense is that started going out of balance in the Neolithic period. It started going out of balance when we started living in cities, which was accompanied by a hierarchical society, by agriculture, obviously, by also by patriarchy, by a downvaluing of women compared with men. All of these things seem to happen at roughly the same time. And that's a process that's been going on ever since. So it's maybe, 10,000 years to get started, 4,000 years we've been living fully in patriarchal civilization. It's a long time, and it's high time we did something else, in my view.
Mm. So extending that, today, how can human culture find a balance between domestication and wildness? Where is the balance?
Well, feature of balance is that it's always moving, isn't it? It's not in one fixed place. It's like riding a bicycle. If you try to stay completely perpendicular, you'll fall off very quickly. You have to move backwards and forwards. That's what balance is. I think that's true on every level. And it's very difficult to imagine the way that our society can be in balance now, largely because there are so many of us.
Mm.
Living in a hunter-gatherer culture, which in many ways is, I think, better for us than the way we live now. It involves very small numbers of people in very large areas. It's simply not possible to imagine going back to that. So it's a huge task to think about how we can recreate some of the values of that in a much more crowded world, in a world where there's no away that people can go to, where we're all inside our society all the time, and the entire world is inside human society now, in fact. It's a long and difficult process, and I certainly haven't got a blueprint for it. But I think the more people who become aware of this as an issue and become aware of what is missing, the better the chances are of our finding some ways of improving the situation.
Hmm. So how can psychotherapy and ecotherapy, ecopsychology promote and facilitate wild mind or ecological consciousness to help this along?
Well, a very important way, the most fundamental way, I think, is to actually get up out of our chairs and get out of the room. And increasing numbers of people, certainly in the UK, I'm sure in other places, increasing numbers of therapists are actually finding themselves drawn to that. I find the change enormous over the last 20 years. It was about 20 years ago probably that I started going around giving talks and seminars around working outdoors. And it was a very strange idea then. It was regarded as a very dangerous idea. And now loads of people are doing it. And what we found through experience, really, not through theory, but through experience, what we found is that actually taking therapy outside, literally outdoors, changes not only the way we do it there, but the way we do it back in the room. That there's a direct effect back into the room. Because, when you go outside, you can't do it in the same way. You can't keep the same frame that you would normally have in traditional psychotherapy. It becomes ludicrous, even trying. You have to open it up. You have to have a more equal relationship. The therapist is physically present in a different way. Sometimes the client actually is more competent in the environment than the therapist is. You're walking side by side. It wouldn't be quite natural for one person to walk ahead facing backwards. It's a different world. And it's a world where things have to happen in a more relaxed, open, natural, spontaneous kind of way. And when you get out there and you realize that actually you can still do therapy like that, that's going to affect the way you do therapy in the room. I felt that very much in my own practice, and I think a lot of other people have as well. So I suppose my first interest was in opening up therapists to the other than human world. And then there's a knock-on effect from that. It affects clients as well, because we treat our clients in a different way and they pick up on different things as a result.
So, what are your psychotherapy clients? This came in from one of our viewers or one of our registrants. What are your psychotherapy clients bringing you now in relation to the environmental crisis that is different than 5 and 10 years ago? And how have your psychotherapeutic responses and your practice as a psychotherapist changed over the last 10 years?
I should say that I don't see many clients now. I turned 70 this year, and I'm trying to find a way of semi-retiring. And so what I'm doing is mostly supervision and a few clients. So I can't fully answer the question. But what I've been saying for some time was that I thought that the environmental crisis was going to come into the therapy room increasingly, and that over time a great deal of our work as therapists, for all therapists, was going to be about supporting people in facing the really catastrophic situation we're in. And I see that happening. I think in the last few years, that's really happened a lot more. I hear that from people I supervise, as well as experiencing it myself, that an awful lot of clients are bringing their fears about the state of the world into the room. And it's a lot about permission, isn't it? What people will talk about in the therapy room is an awful lot about what they feel the therapist wants to hear. I mean, I don't mean the content, I mean the topic. And I think a lot of therapists are now able to handle that kind of conversation in a way that maybe we weren't a few years back, because we've done our personal work in confronting the really scary things about climate heating. So because of that, we're able to welcome other people's fears into the room and to have a good conversation about them. I think that is really starting to happen a great deal more. Excuse me, I'm recovering from a cold.
Yes. Your last chapter, you share your feelings of grief and shame about what is happening in the world.
Yeah.
But also the importance of bearing witness to what is happening. So my question is, how do you personally cope, manage, deal with all of these feelings in the process of bearing witness?
With difficulty, of course. I had a practice for a while. I still do it sometimes in groups, of actually saying to people, "Okay, I'm going to say a couple of sentences now about what I think the future holds, and I want you to try to be present and hear what I'm saying, and allow yourself to feel the reactions in your body and your mind." And of course, that was equally a challenge for me to stay present in saying those things. And I found myself going in and out of it. And I still find myself going in and out of being able to accept the reality of what's going on and to not dissociate from it. There are so many clever, subtle ways we have of dissociating, aren't there? And at the moment, the one I notice in myself, you know, as people are increasingly talking about how we may not be able to find a solution, a bit of me wants to go, "Oh, I know that, you know, oh, so you're catching up with me, are you?" You know, like a sort of patronizing, world-weary response, which of course is a form of avoidance. So bringing myself back, to keep bringing myself back to the real gut feeling around this. and to the hopelessness, and to despair about what may happen. It's hard work, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm sure you know that too.
Yeah. That kind of leads to a question from one of the viewers that I know you wanted to have a chance to answer. What are your current imaginings about the Earth systems and civilizational future in 2030?
Yeah, I mean that's a question I've already implicitly started answering, I think, in what I was just saying. I think I was going to say we need to, and of course that's not true. But I think if we want to, we're facing the reality that things are going to get very, very, very bad. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The question is what, if anything, might lie beyond that, beyond some very difficult decades and centuries. And I think a very important role I see for ecopsychology at the moment is to try to sow some seeds of a more sane society that might possibly emerge on the other side of this. It seems to me unlikely that human beings are going to become extinct. I think often people have a sort of idea that human beings might disappear and everything else would go, oh, thank God, and carry on. That seems so unlikely to me. I think we and the cockroaches and the rats and the seagulls will be the last survivors. So if anything makes it through, human beings will. And I think if we take the long view, how are we going to help make it more likely that those human beings will be able to live in a different balance with the other than human? That's a part of our job, is to try to vision that and to try to pass something on.
So how can wild therapy or wild mind be applied to a group or community setting outside of the consulting room?
Well, that's actually been my major experience of it. Because for several years I ran a training in wild therapy for therapists mostly, and also some others. That's still going on without me running it. But and the basic structure of that was to take a group out into, I don't want to say the wild. I don't actually want to take human beings into wilderness. I'd rather people didn't go there, personally. And what we think of as wild in the UK is not what you in Canada think of as the wild. But to take people out into a place without the usual technological supports that part of our everyday life. I take a group of therapists out there and just set up a very simple structure over a period of several days of people going out from the camp in ones or in twos or in threes, spending some time in relation to other than human, and coming back again and sharing our experiences as a group. And another part of that was social dreaming, was sharing our dreams every morning. And all of these things fed into a group experience, which turned out to be the center of what was happening, really, the sharing with each other, the learning from each other, and the sense of a group identity that came out of that.
So if I heard you correctly, you want to take groups or expose groups to interacting with the more than human, other than human, but not necessarily go into the wilderness.
No, I don't think you need to at all, actually. I think you can have a profound experience of otherness in the wood round the corner, you know. It's a place where we've done our well therapy workshops. It's a valley that's actually, you know, it's a car park at the top of the valley. It's not inaccessible in that sense, but you go down and you go down and you go across a bridge over a river, and you go across another bridge over a river. And the second bridge is a swing bridge, and it's a little bit scary. And you find yourself in a place where all you can see in all directions is trees. And that's just 8 miles away from Lancaster, which is quite a large town. You can find wilderness in that sense, but without having to interfere with what's left of ecosystems on the planet. I'm sorry, I'm coughing. I should have had some water with me, but I forgot.
Oh dear. And can you handle one more question?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
There was a couple of questions that came in about practical applications of wild therapy for children.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that? Do you have any comments on that?
I don't have any experience of it. I'm not sure I'd think in terms of doing wild therapy with children. I think more in terms of just going out with them and having a good time.
So just getting outside and
yeah. I mean, you know, there's masses of evidence, and we don't really need evidence. We just know, don't we, that it's very good for children.
Right.
To spend time out of doors and to have a relationship with the other human.
Right. Well, that's all my questions. Nick, do you have any parting words of wisdom for our viewers?
Nothing that immediately comes to mind, I think, except maybe just following on from what I said about children. I think what I'm talking about is largely a no-brainer, you know. It's just, it's a natural part of human life. What's strange is when we don't interact with the other creatures we share our planet with. And that's what we need to ask questions about, really, is how does it come about that so many of us actually have very little interaction?
That's the undomesticating part, I guess.
Yeah.
Super. Well, I'm going to end the recording now. Thank you, Nick Totton.
Thank you.